Hi, everyone. You are listening to Play Now, Play for Life, a podcast for music educators. I'm your host, Erin Hansen. I'm a former band director and general music teacher of 29 years and now a part of the West Music team. Every episode, we sit down and chat with experts in music education to learn about their tricks of the trade and other topics in music education. And today is a great day to be part of this podcast because we have two special guests. We have Dr. Nicki Toliver from Wartburg College, and she's going to talk more about her position. And we have Chris Thompson, also connected with Wartburg College. And I have to say, this is an especially special podcast for me because I have personal connections to both these people. Chris was my very first principal as a teacher at Janesville Schools many years ago. So we go way back. And now I'll let her talk about her position. And Nicki and I got to work together at Wartburg when I was doing the bell choir at Wartburg, and we got to do Christmas with Wartburg together. And plus, we've worked with student teachers together, and Chris and I have worked with student teachers together. So there are a lot of connections in this podcast. So welcome to you both. It's so great to have both of you here. And I want to start with, could you just tell, we always like to get to know our guests a little bit. So just a little bit about your professional background. And if you have, Chris is in a slightly different position. She wasn't a music teacher, but any music background you might have, because I know you and I talked about that a little bit. So Chris, if you want to start with that.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. This is the first time in my 74 years I've ever done a podcast. So I'm kind of excited about this. I started my career in New Hartford, Iowa. 20 years in the classroom. I taught high school history, fourth grade, first, second, and third grade in a unit situation. I was a cheerleading coach. I did not do the cartwheels. And I also was a class sponsor, small schools. Got my administrative degree from UNI and was hired at Janesville. 20 years there as principal, K6. PK6, PK8, PK12, athletic director, taught math for 2 years, taught reading for a year. Just a lot of things because, again, small schools. I retired from there in 2012, and Scott Munnerfering, Dr. Munnerfering from the Wartburg faculty, I'd spoken in classes for him before, and he said, how about coming to work for Wartburg? And I'm like, doing what? I don't do music. And he said, no, you can step in and be our principal when we observe student teachers. And I thought, wow, what a great way to stay active in a profession I love and to also see what's going on in education now. So in fall of 2013, I started working with Dr. Toliver and Dr. Munnerfering in the music department, and I get to go out every fall and do a couple of observations on every music student teacher at Wartburg. My music background, well, I am one heck of a percussionist. I did not well, I could carry a tune if someone was right next to me singing. But I will have to just toot my own horn that I can play the drums pretty dang good.
Well, I know your capabilities because I've seen you in my classroom observing student teachers, and you are very capable of jumping in and
Oh, I do dance with the kids. Yes, I should have said that.
yes, you do. Yes, you do. So, all right, Nicki, what's give us your whole background.
Wow, well, mine will pale in comparison to my amazing colleagues, for sure.
I feel this-
But it's so good to be with you today, and thank you for the invitation, Erin, to join you. This is just so exciting. So I started my career in southern Minnesota as a graduate of Concordia College in Moorhead. And so thought that I would, enter one of the wonderful suburbs of Minneapolis as a choral educator and just stay there the rest of my life. But that the universe had a different plan for me. And so I taught in Minnesota for 2 years, and my whole career has been mostly 9 through 12 or 7 through 12 vocal music. So I don't have the general music experience in my public school career, but I have the great pleasure of now teaching methods in that. And you, Mr. Henson, have been an amazing mentor for me and being able to pass on what I really need to share with my students. So thanks for being part of their development. But I taught in Minnesota for 2 years in the public schools, and both in Le Sueur and St. Peter, and then felt a calling to continue my education and at grad school level. So I did my master's at Arizona State University, and from there was recruited to open up two new schools in the Las Vegas, which is Clark County School District in Las Vegas and Henderson, Nevada, which was never part of the plan. I didn't even know they had schools there. And what a cool cultural experience to be a professional educator in a city that is just that not only diverse but transient and so rich with culture and so many different levels. It was an amazing experience. And but after spending 7 years in that school district, I felt a calling to help to prepare teachers for the classroom. I had been a cooperating teacher at that point 2 times and just felt like the teachers that were coming to me were underdeveloped and undersupported. So I just sort of felt this calling that maybe that could be part of my next step as an educator. And so to do that, I had to get another degree. So I moved my husband all the way up from Las Vegas as the youngest snowbirds probably ever, but left that beautiful area and moved him to North Dakota and did my doctoral work at North Dakota State University. And was a great experience there as well in choral conducting and continued in the teaching world there, but found myself starting to journey south again. So we find ourselves after a few years of teaching in the systems in Minnesota again, finding ourselves here in Iowa. So this is my 11th year at Wartburg College. My two main hats, as educators, we have many responsibilities and many different hats. But my two primary hats are centered around directing two of our 5 choirs, and then coordinator of the music education program with my colleague Scott Montefiore, who has also already been mentioned by my colleague Chris Thompson. So we just have the three of us have so much fun together, helping our teachers get ready for the classroom, and that's where we've settled now.
Well, and just so everybody, listeners that are listening, if you don't know Wartburg College, it is a Lutheran based college. And I'll let Nicki talk to that just a little bit more in a second. But just also so you know, if you're watching the podcast, we are wearing the Wartburg colors because the Wartburg colors are orange and black. So we have, between the three of us, covered the oranges and the blacks.
Yep.
We're representing. So, but Nicki, just really quickly, what kind of makes a difference of a Lutheran based college? I mean, you're a private college. You're not, university. Just a little bit about that difference.
Yeah, thank you. I think the main difference is the focus on liberal arts. So a very global, even though Professor Thompson and I work with professional training for pre-service teachers, the overall experience is really a liberal arts experience. So I kind of compare it to use a Lutheran reference to kind of compare it to the Scandinavian heritage of a smorgasbord where everyone brings a little piece to put on the table, right? And you have many different things from different families and even different mini cultures within that. That's sort of the learning experience here is you just get a little piece of everything, which is really, I think, a global experience for our students. But then you also get to sort of specialize in those last couple of years as you get into your specific studies and into your major a little further, and definitely into some of the professional training that we provide at the college. Our students, neither our students nor our faculty have to be Lutheran or even Christian to attend our college, but it was born out of the Lutheran mission of providing learning experiences in the early 19th, or sorry, mid to late 19th century for preachers and teachers. And so part of their mission was to provide a place where preachers could be trained, Lutheran pastors, and also teachers, whether that's in a school setting that's connected to the church or even moving into public school at that time. So that preacher teacher connection, I think, is important. And we try to hold on to that a little bit, certainly with Wartburg Seminary has helped to take over a portion of that, but our students definitely have a very global experience as far as a large umbrella of training and learning experiences. I think that also provide that setting allows us to really focus on experiential learning opportunities. So, for example, and specifically in our music education program, our students have a chance to experience 5 or 6 field opportunities, whereas I know in my training I only had 3, and some of our sibling schools only provide 2 or 3. So we're really blessed to provide almost double opportunities to be in Mr. Hansen's classroom and learn more about, with real children, learn more about what they're doing and where they how they can be successful, and that additional training that's provided through experience that we can't pull from a textbook or from a lecture.
Well, and I just speaking from my personal experience, I mean, having been employed at Wartburg
Hmm.
in years past, I mean, the music program is very strong. It's very well known,
Yep.
and I was proud to be part of that when I was there. I have so many wonderful memories from being there and working with those students and things. Okay, ladies, so let's get into it. So, talking about undergraduates and preparing student teachers and all that sort of things. And Nikki, I think you probably want to start with this question and then I'll get to Chris. But how does Warburg go about preparing undergraduates for their student teaching experience or even just observing just those placements and those kind of things? What do you do to help them prepare for that?
That's a great kickoff question. So thank you for that, Aaron. I would say the primary preparation is one that I've already mentioned, actually, what we call the field experience. And so we provide an opportunity connected to a classroom experience. We provide an opportunity for our students to leave our campus and be in a public school setting with a master educator and real children of all ages. And we try to provide a variety K through 12 because, as you know well, the licensure in our state, in the state of Iowa, is K through 12 everything in music education. And when I say everything, I mean general music, band, choir, orchestra. And so it's a very big box to fill. We have a large toolbox to fill, and we get creative in how we do that. But we also, to balance that, want our future teachers to have an opportunity to specialize a little bit. So we do provide a track option for them as they get into their third year. But field experience, I think, is the number one opportunity. And we really encourage our students as soon as they feel ready um, to step out of the observation opportunity, which is maybe the first visit or two, and really, be proactive about getting involved in the classroom. So, in a general music classroom, that might be moving from a chair that's observing on the outside of the classroom to joining the circle and being a participant within the circle with students. And in a secondary situation, it might be asking if it's possible for the student learner to be able to warm up the choir, or to run a sectional, or to teach a voice lesson, or to teach an instrumental lesson, something of that nature. But that, again, that experiential learning, I mean, we can talk about it all day long, but until they can take those tools and put them into practice, even the smallest way, it's hard for them to imagine themselves, in that role sometimes. So field experience is number one.
Well, and I think you've touched on such a good point because Chris and I were talking about this the other day because we chat before these podcasts happen. But I was saying, even with student teachers, I know they want to take notes. I know they want to sit and observe and get observation. But to me, the number one thing is come down and get involved.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just get involved. And, with student teachers, that's a different scenario because they want to get to know the kids. So it's like the only way you're going to get to know the kids is coming down and getting involved. But even with field experience, I mean, when they come in, yes, I know you want to type notes on your laptop. I know you want to do that. And you should. I mean, that's important too to take those notes home, but come down and be in the lesson and you're going to get more out of it than just doing notes. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Well, and Mr. Hansen, as a former general music specialist, you also know that experience is always first. I mean, the training that you've had in the ORF methodology, promotes experience over labels or terms or anything like that. So, like I said, we can talk about this in a textbook all day long, but until they can have the experience, even if they're not taking notes, they'll remember the experience. They'll remember how it made them feel. They remember what they did. Like that's a very memorable moment. And even if they don't have notes, that experience is just essential.
Well, and as you say that, it's the same for adult learners
Yes.
because when I go to org workshops, there are some people that I just want the notes
Mhm.
and I want to sit here and I want to write. And I get it because they want to get everything out of this lesson. But you get more if you just there are some presenters that say you'll get the notes at the end
Mhm.
because you're just going to experience the
Yep.
lesson
So
Yep.
true.
and
Yeah.
then you get the notes.
Mhm.
And for some people that's really hard because they're like, give me the notes, I can't handle this, give me the notes. But anyway, Chris, what would you add on to that? And then what would you say as being an administrator, because you were an administrator for many years, what's your perspective on how student teacher preparation has either improved or not improved over the years? I think we agreed it improved,
Oh,
but
tremendously. Thanks, Aaron. And you and I kind of hit on this the other day too. I think the biggest thing that I've seen when I started in my own classroom at New Hartford, um, these poor kids came to me. They had not had one field experience, and out of all my student teachers in 20 years, I had to actually say three of these are not ready to. They're just not ready to be teachers. And I think what I saw happen when I got to Janesville, and Wartburg was a prime example because some previous, and I don't know, Dr. T, were you knew Dr. Bodensteiner or Sue Sherwood? They were both in the ed department.
Yeah, just my first year here, we were
Okay.
just barely crossed paths. Yes.
But those two just started saying, we got to do something different here. You cannot pay this kind of money to come to this wonderful college and then get to May of your senior year and be told I don't think you should be a teacher. And so they started implementing, as you're talking about, Nikki, all of these field experiences and saying, go out, get in classrooms and find out what it's like. And wow, we noticed such a change at Janesville. And to Wartburg's credit, we noticed it coming from Wartburg first. And then, yes, we had you and I jump on. We always used to get a few from Dubuque. And so, but the change was coming from Wartburg, and that's what it was. Get the kids into the classroom sooner. And I
Mhm.
really think that's been a positive.
do you notice that through field experiences, are there some students that find this isn't for me or oh, I thought I was going to be a high school teacher, but maybe now I want to be a middle school teacher or now I want to be an elementary teacher or what have you? Do you see a lot of that?
Yes, I mean, both. Yes, for sure. I think the greatest, regarding field experiences, I think the greatest thing we've added um, is a full 25-hour placement in their first year. And I think that is the key because we want them to find their calling. Teaching education in any field, area, grade level, anything should never be like a plan B. It should never be this, if I fall back, something to fall back on. I mean, we want it to be their full 100% calling. That may change in their lifetime, but at least at that moment, that's what they're committed to do. So, um, you know, we do lose a few in that first year. Sometimes it's even in their third semester, but I actually celebrate those moments because it's not that I want to lose them from our area, but that means that the student has found a way to confirm what their calling really is. And so if that happens in first year, that's wonderful. That's confidence, that is focus, that is they know that they're making the most of their investment. But if it's not and they need to change their major, it's much better for them to do that in their first or second year than in their last year.
Exactly.
Not only financially, but just, time, like the clock is ticking too. I mean, we want to get into our professional life. And so um, I think that's just been an important element of that discovery process for them. I mean, really, it's ridiculously unfair that we ask 18-year-olds to make a 40-year commitment to something that they're going to, and it's
Yep.
just amazing that we even ask them to do that. And I'm speaking about when they come in as an undergrad in their first year, you're asking them, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? That's a big ask. And so they should never feel shame in changing their major. And certainly if they're not called to education, we would want to encourage them to find what they are called to do.
And I would tag on to that. My experience in the music department has been, I've enjoyed it because I get to work with people who, like Nicki and Scott, who know music. That's what they do, and they're fabulous at it. So I can draw on that and take what they've taught me and go into a classroom. And one of the things I've learned is that, well, besides solfege, which I had no idea what that was, but I also, how kids in music have had these wonderful field experiences. And I just last year, I've done field experience here, I've done this here, I've done that here, and I want to work with high school kids. I cannot deal with little kids. I am not going to deal with little kids. And okay, fine, but we're going to get you through these experiences. What do you think at the end? I love working with the little ones. So it's good to have all those field experiences, but the bottom line comes until you jump in and do it. And I think that's what Wartburg has done with, like Nicki said, we get them they do a K3 or they do a 7-8 or a high school because of the endorsement, because of the K-12. So I just think that's so wonderful because those kids, and Nicki, echoing you, even at 20 and 21, it's hard to say, for the rest of my life, I am going to teach 7th and 8th grade instrumental music. Uh, so yes, I do think that has been a real plus that Wartburg has really picked up on all the field experience levels.
Well, and I think it's really important you just said that because, and I've shared this with Nikki in the past, and probably you too, Chris, but you get these kids that come in and observe, and you just ask them, what do you think you're going to teach? Well, they're always, oh, high school choir, high school band. That's
Yep.
it. And then they come in and get immersed in the elementary world and think, I don't know. I think maybe this is where I want to be because you're teaching. They don't think we're teaching stuff down there. So now it's like, oh, you're teaching all these concepts. You're teaching all these things that get kids started. Well, yeah, I know that. And all of a sudden their mind just changes. Like, maybe I want to be here
Yep.
and establish that. So I'm glad to hear
Absolutely.
both of you say that.
Well, if I can expand on that just for a second too, Erin, my other thought was, when you think about the most relatable and recent experience they have when they come to their undergrad is an ensemble. And so it kind of makes sense that they would gravitate towards that first, because even though they likely were successful in an ensemble because of their general music experience, they just probably don't connect that or remember that vividly because it was, 6 years ago,
Right. Right.
the time of
Yep.
when they came to us. So I try to remember that, but then I also know that because those high school ensemble experiences are so transforming when they're part of a really dynamic and good program, I think they come to music education thinking they're going to major in choir or band. I mean, really at the base bottom, I don't know that they even think in that first semester that they're actually going to be a teacher. They just know that they want to be the teacher that stood in front of them and major in choir or band or orchestra. And keeping those two things in mind for me helps me to sort of stay grounded in where they are at the moment, and then I can sort of help them blossom from there. If
That's a
hopefully.
good point.
Well, and it's those are two very different um, roles. Because
Yes.
if you're a choir or band director, you're conducting, you're directing, that's your job.
Mhm.
And that's very important. Your general music teacher, it's totally different. I mean,
Mhm.
you're conducting whatever, but I mean, you're just leading and guiding, and it's such a
Inspire.
different dynamic, but they're both so important. So
Yeah,
I
very
I
much.
totally agree. I'm glad you brought that point up because that makes a lot of sense that they come out of their high school experience, and
Mhm.
so that's what's freshest in their mind.
That is a good point.
Yes, and I really make it a point with second years to talk about the difference in philosophy between the ensemble and the general music experience. I really think our general music experience is more closely aligned with the philosophy of a music therapist, where I serve everyone that walks in the room. It's not about product; it's about process, and you're providing an experience first for every single child, regardless of talent, regardless of ability, regardless of private lessons, regardless of, you know, camps or whatever that's provided later in kind of those ensemble years. And I think that's helpful in distinguishing, even though it's a big word to use, philosophically for them as a second year, but to be able to sort of see where they're being called. It helps with their calling, I think, to see, is that really what I'm about, is more the process piece, or do I want to stand in the podium with the light shining on me, which is always a concern when I hear that, as a rationale for choosing music education as a profession. But that's all I know at the moment, and we can provide the rest of it along the journey as they get into their degree a little bit more.
Let me ask you ladies this one. What do you enjoy the most when you're working with your undergraduate students, when you go out and observe? I mean, what do you love?
It's pretty simple for me, just being in a classroom and seeing the wonderful things. When you retire from public schools and in your heart of hearts, you're thinking, I don't know if they can do this without me because, well, you've been there for so long. And then you get to go out into these classrooms and see people like Mr. Hanson with his wonderful, wonderful fun approach to teaching these kids. And we have so many in this area. And probably my favorite thing to do is to just watch how our kids, Wartburg kids, blossom with the old, the veterans, the co-ops that are out there, because it just does my heart good because I can say, you know what? It's all right. It's gonna be fine. These kids are going to bring to education wonderful things. So for me, the best part is just being out in those classrooms and seeing what's going on and keeping me abreast of the changes in education too.
Yeah, I 100% agree. In addition, I would say the light bulb moments of when you get to witness a pre-service teacher connect something. Maybe it was from an earlier lecture, or maybe it's something we had discussed before their lesson, anticipating, and then there was actually a result of some kind, or just their little successes that even students wouldn't recognize, but we know that happened. I think those light bulb moments, I mean, that's so true in all of our teaching, right? But just that piece of it, I think, is so important. And that's what I enjoy the most, in addition to being in the classroom, but just watching their persona grow. And so we talk about the teacher's persona is should be different, and often is different from you having coffee with your bestie talking about life. There's a different persona there because you have a leadership role, and you have a mentoring role, and you have many levels of responsibility happening. But to see that persona sort of form right before your eyes, is that amazing, Chris? You kind of get
It
to
is.
see that from one visit to the next.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's a really cool
Absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
What Well, let me ask this question, and we're not calling out names, but um since you both go out to a lot of different classrooms, I
Mhm.
mean, is it really interesting seeing how all the different classrooms run?
Oh,
Whether it's their management style or how they teach or just whatever. What's that like a little bit? I'm just being Snoopy now, but
Just go for it.
Snoopy.
Chris just went out to two classrooms this morning, so she
I
could.
was. I
Yeah.
was. Um, I think what's what's fun to see is that you, Aaron, might teach this way and get the kids to this level where you want them and what you want them doing. And I might walk into a different classroom and that teacher has a whole different approach, but they get them to the same point. So it's good for me to see that because being a non-music person, especially, to see how you can still get to whatever that objective is. The other thing that I think is just so neat is, and I don't know, Nikki, if you've ever written down. I don't keep track of all the classrooms I've been in the area, but and I'm going to be real honest. There are some co-ops who do a fabulous job of teaching, but they are not what I would call the best fit for a student teacher. And I've seen a few of those, and Nikki, I know you have too. And but the thing for me that I like to do is then I kinda like to work with that co-op too and help them see, well, could you do this? Could you maybe help this student teacher do this? So I like the challenge of going out, but it brings music itself, observing music student teachers. There's a joyfulness about it that takes place in, 90% of the classrooms. And so I am blessed to be in all those different classrooms. I enjoy every minute of it always.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, part of what Chris and I do is building relationships with teachers around the valley so that we can, um, kind of, we have sort of our pod of really master educators that we would seek out every semester, year after year after year, to please take our student teachers, because they have that perfect balance, what you just described, Chris, that perfect balance of excellent teaching but also really good mentoring skills. And and I've just found that what gets in the way of the mentoring piece is usually the ego. And we all agree that, in especially in our, the performing arts, there we all need a little bit of ego. It's what sometimes what drives us as performers, and likely as educators and conductors too. Um but I think when that ego gets in the way of letting someone else grow in your experience, or at least in the experience that you're able to provide in your classroom, that's a sad moment. So I know when I'm making matches for student teachers, more than even teaching skills or training, I'm really looking for personalities that will match really well, where I sense that they will be able to develop a really strong professional relationship.
Well, and Nikki, I'm glad to hear you say that because that was the next question, which I'm not going to ask because you just answered it. But I was
It's
going to
okay.
ask as far as cooperating teachers, because having been one for, I think I've had over 30 student teachers in my career.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, if that was a consideration as you match student teachers to cooperating teachers, because in my experience, I've had very good luck.
Mm.
I would say I probably only had one in all my years that did not go well, and
Mm.
probably I should have had that person placed somewhere else, and I thought I could do it. I was like, "No, I can work this. I can do it." And it didn't work out so well, but the rest have all been fantastic. And I think those connections you make, I mean, Chris, my two cooperating teachers from Waverly Shell Rock, of course, I got to be their colleagues when I went to Waverly, but I mean, we are still friends to this day.
Yep.
And they're still my mentors. I mean, when I have anything education, I call them and I say, okay, I need your advice. I just need to know what to do. And they're always there. And, you build those relationships. And I have my former student teachers, that message me and say, I'm thinking about doing this. I don't know. What do you think? And to build those relationships with them is just really special because it's something you can carry through your whole career.
Well, and if I can jump in, this kind of is about that same thing. But one of the things that Nikki and I and Scott always talk to our student teachers about is, yes, you need to get into that classroom and start building relationships with your students. You need to get to know them. You need to know who comes to school without a breakfast, who has to go home and babysit their kid. But you need to develop that rapport and relationship with your co-op so that you 2, and exactly what you said, Aaron, so that 5 years down the road, I can pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Mr. Hanson, do you remember me?" And you say, "Well, yeah. Well, I remember you told me," and establish that, because I'll tell you what, and Nikki, how many times do we say this to our kids? You're gonna Those people that you work with are gonna get a random call someday and say, would you even hire Chris Thompson? She was in your classroom. And the student teacher's like, yeah, but what if you don't put them on your list of references? Doesn't matter. Establish that relationship so that those co-ops will be able to talk about you in a positive way and be able to share things. And that's what a big part of student teaching, I think, is all about.
Well, yeah, you're totally right. And as a cooperating teacher, I mean, you want to establish that relationship because this is a person who's going to be teaching
Yep.
your kids. I
Mhm.
mean, in the end, sorry, student teachers, you're moving on,
That's true.
which is always shocking to the kids because they don't know where they went. They think we sent them somewhere. They're like, what happened to them? I'm like, they have to move on. That's just how it goes. But you're only here for this time, and it's still my classroom in the end. And so we have to have that relationship that I can trust you,
Yep.
when it's time for you to start teaching activities and teaching songs and doing things with the kids, that I know you can do that and
Absolutely.
take
Yep.
over at the same level of what they're used to. And so, yeah, that relationship piece is huge, huge, which is
Absolutely.
why you guys are so important because when you come into the classrooms, that's our time. We don't always get long to talk, unfortunately, with these elementary schedules, but if there are concerns or whatever is happening, then that's our time to get that to you. Speaking of that, what would you guys say in this current state of education and everything that's going on? What would you say are some of the struggles that student teachers looking to go into teaching jobs? What are some of the things they're facing nowadays? I mean, we're all old enough. We didn't deal with this 20, 30 years ago,
Or
but
50.
things are different now. I mean, we have a teacher shortage and we have different things going on. So I don't who wants to start
Go
with
ahead,
that?
Nikki, jump in.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Chris. Gosh, it's probably a longer list than you want to hear but I don't want to sound like it's doom and gloom. Um, but when I think about highlighting those, I would say one of the items on that list would be accepting our teaching role as a lifestyle as opposed to a job. And I want you to sit with the word lifestyle for a minute there because that's sort of a newer concept that I've been able to describe what we do. Because I think if we think of it as a job and that we're going to have set hours and that we're going to never bring our work home with us a- and be able to escape the 24-hour demands of what our fields are like, even and when I say this, I don't mean this in a negative way, but even at the general music level, and what I mean by that is when you're working with K6, there are less after school and weekend responsibilities than if you are working with 712, for example. And so that doesn't mean that they're not important. It just means that you don't have as many of those extracurricular activities. But presenting it as a lifestyle versus a job, I think, is a difficult concept for some of our young teachers to understand because I think they truly imagine there's going to be some sort of work life balance. And we all know that there's never a 50-50 in most career paths, but especially in ours. It's more of a roller coaster. Um, and so I think that's one thing that is helpful to clarify in the early parts of their studies.
Okay, but
Safety.
can I ask you about that just for a
Yes.
second? Because would you say that's a current trend? Because I feel like that's been that way for a long time. And Chris, maybe
Yes,
you
I
want
wouldn't
to
say
jump
the
in.
demands
I
are not a
mean, I
current trend.
feel
I would say
like
the way they think about them is a current trend.
okay.
I think
Because
our
I
I think
remember my early years of teaching, and I would spend weekends up at
yes.
Janesville schools.
Yes.
And I remember kids saying, I always see your car and Mrs. Rolling's car. You're both up at school on the weekends. And
Yep.
it was because there was stuff we had to get done.
Yeah.
And we just did it because you had to do it. I mean, it was like, so I
Yes.
mean, I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
I totally understand. And I agree with what you're saying, but I don't know that that's necessarily a new. I think teachers. I think we've been doing it for so long that we just did it
Yes.
and we never shook our heads. I
But I
mean,
think the
and
way Gen Zs think about it is that they actually will walk out the door at 4 every day,
right,
and they actually can say no to things. And yes,
yes,
you can say no, but what I'm saying is that, the teachers that the master educators in your building who have done all of those after school things for the last 30 years, like, they're ready to start saying no, and they've
yes.
earned the right to start saying no, and I know this is gonna sound old-fashioned, but new teachers haven't. Like, you need to be saying yes to everything. And so the idea of I'm gonna arrive at 8 and leave at 4 at any level and any grade level and any part of what we do, I just don't I just that is a new trend that they can think that they imagine it will be, that cut and dried.
It's
And I
more,
will have
yeah,
my
it's
weekends off
more
too.
of this to this job, this
Yep.
hour to this hour, done.
Uh-huh.
And
And
I would say you talk about some of the changes or differences. I think our teachers are carrying some big loads these days. A quality teacher when I started did 6:30 in the morning till 5:30 at night. That's but there's so much more on their plates as to standards and what the district expects and what the state expects. And well, we know that nationally it won't matter anymore. But I'm just saying I think that and then the other part of it is, and again, I'm not trying to do the doom and gloom, but our generation, some of them coming up kind of think they're entitled, and that entitlement, and we talk about this openly in seminar, you guys have to earn your spot. You are not gonna walk in at, and using Carissa Lambert, who is a wonderful teacher, you're not gonna walk in and impress her by saying, "I'm your new colleague, but I can only meet with you at 8:30, and I'm gonna need to leave at 3:30 because" no, no, because that's a woman who has been doing it all for how many years, and so I think that's a change. Yes, we're asking more, but if you're gonna go into teaching, you're gonna have to give too.
Mhm.
We don't want you to wear out. We want mental health is important and self-care is highly important, but you still have to put yourself out there a little bit.
Mhm.
well, and that's my next question to you ladies, as you both just brought it up, because and as I just left teaching a year ago, at that point, we're getting more and more added, but is anything being taken away? No,
Exactly.
it's just more and more added. So how do you as training undergraduates going into being first year teachers, because that's when we're losing our teachers in this first through like 5 6 years, this burnout. How do we keep encouraging them? It's even hard as a cooperating teacher. I mean, if I'm asked directly, what are the benefits of going into teaching right now, it's hard to say. I mean, it's hard for me to list 10 things that are.
Yeah.
What do you say?
I
That's a
mean,
tough question.
the
It is.
only the only thing I can think of that's, in on that list would be to fulfill your calling. I mean, really. I mean, if you think about and maybe benefits, but who's thinking about, retirement benefits at 22?
Right.
Um, like Ipers would be maybe a benefit, but who thinks about that at 22? Um, yeah, I mean, we are asking them to, manage a workload that is significantly, more than other fields are expected to accomplish. We're asking them to be in charge of the formation of other lives.
Yep.
Um, when there may not be full cooperation for that, because there's what we need for our students, but then we have, working with their parents as part of that journey, and sometimes the parent has a different view of what the student needs than you do as their teacher. We're asking them to lay their lives down for their students. How
Yep.
many people are willing to do that?
Yep.
And I mean, that may sound dramatic to some, but it's true. Are you willing to jump in front of your student to save their life?
Yep. And that's the other thing too. And I say this, and I've said it in seminar, I've said it individually. I just said it to a student teacher today. You are laying the foundation for every other profession in the world. You have to have an education, K-12, to go on. If you're going to go out and be an electrician, you have to have that education. If you're going to go out and be a groundskeeper, that's a big deal now doing the stuff at golf courses. They're still going to say to you, well, do you have a high school diploma? So you're laying the foundation, but and be proud of it. You're needed. We appreciate you. It won't always be shown. In the old days, a half a beef was given to the teachers once a year, or, whatever it was that to show appreciation. But
That was before my time,
well, it was before mine, but I've heard the story.
but I like the idea.
Yeah, I do too. But I think the biggest thing that I say then is remember all this stuff on your plate. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You you're not in this alone, and I don't care if you're at New Hartford North Campus where there's, I don't know what they've got, 35 faculty, or if you are at Waverly Shell Rock Middle School where they have 80, or West High. There's still someone there that you should be able to turn to and say, I need help. I'm struggling. And the same thing, your mental health. That doesn't mean and Nikki and I had a situation that we both were kind of puzzled by it. A young teacher saying, "Oh, I don't talk to anybody. I don't take phone calls. I don't go out in the community. I don't. That's my time." And we're kind of like, well, that's a little bit the other way. But you do need to slice out a little bit of time for yourself and for your own mental health.
Yeah, you do. I mean, no matter what you do. And you have to have those people in your life, whether it's a colleague or somebody at your home or whatever, that helps you.
Yep,
And I've
absolutely.
always been lucky because I've had that through my career. I mean, Mrs. T, I had Mrs. Squires at Janesville,
Yep,
and I would go down almost every day because I was a new teacher.
yep,
And she goes, just sit down. And
yep,
then what's going on? And then I would talk about it. And then, okay, this is what you're going to do. And luckily now I've turned around and I'm old enough. I'm that person that I can say, okay, what's going on?
yep.
Okay, this is what you're going
Exactly.
to do.
Mhm.
But you have to have those people in your life to help you,
Absolutely.
or any of us. I mean, how do you handle everything? So, well, you two ladies are powerful. Um, okay, let me ask this one. What kind of feedback or advice would you give to your student teachers as they're looking for a job?
Yes, and so if you want me to get more specific about actual feedback to their teaching, I can do that. But generally, when they're searching for a position, and Chris and I give the same message. We actually talk about this together a lot. Like number one, make sure that you are finding a community that's a good fit for you. You are interviewing the district and your future colleagues just as much as they are interviewing you. And I will say that is different from when the three of us started teaching. I mean, you were just thankful to get a job, and at least for me, I knew I would be starting in a small rural community and have to sort of work my way up to a suburban, urban, for a position. And I say up in quotes because we all should be growing where we're planted. That's not the goal for everyone. That was just my goal. And so, not to settle for something that they know is not going to be a good fit for them. And right now, more than ever, honestly, they are looking at particular states to be teaching, and our current teachers are, because of the not only political interference in education, but the social elements. Um, because they know wherever they end up teaching, they also are going to be living.
Yep.
And um, if I can be very honest, all but one are looking out of state right now.
And Nikki, we talked about this last fall already, the changes, and not to make this a political statement, but I think our young teachers are savvy enough to know that I need to investigate the district that I'm applying to. And if it does not match my own personal beliefs, okay, I might go and do an interview for the experience, but that sure as heck is not where I want to, start my first 5 years in the classroom. And that's always what, and we say it over and over, all of us in our fall seminars, take the interview, but don't take the first job if it's not what you really want. And I think that is so true. Take a look at it, take a look at your community. Justin Stockdale comes and speaks to seminar for our music kids. And he always says, drive through your communities, check and see what they've got, check things out before you. And of course, he does a lot of Zoom things too. So that's harder, but get out there and check them out. So you know that it's a community you really like to be a part of. And yeah, and pay attention to what they believe. And Nicki, you always say it, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you.
Well, and I think that's a really important point because I've been writing a couple blogs for West Music, and one was about budgets, and another, I don't remember what the other one was about, organizing your classroom. And I said, do not be afraid at your interview to be asking these questions. What is my budget? Is there a budget? What is my classroom situation? What does it look like? Go look at it. Like
Yep.
you
Yep.
said, you're interviewing them as well.
Yep.
And
Yeah, and we've even encouraged them to ask even some questions that I know I would not have asked in my early years of teaching. Things like, please describe the culture of your building.
Mhm.
Please
yes,
describe what does the community want for your music program? Um, I think there was a time where music was in competition with sports, but it's so much more than that now, and not that it's more competition. It's so much more necessary and needed, but hard to do well, difficult to do well in a community that's not going to support your agenda for your students,
And
your
one of
goals.
the things that I like to have, and I encourage music student teachers to ask is, number one, do you have like a music booster club, or is it part, what kind of support? And number two, hey, just for my own sake of mind as I'm thinking this through, if there's a conflict between, say, a basketball activity and music, do you have a rule of how that's handled? You can learn a lot about a district if very subtly they say, well, what we would probably do is ask you to see if you could change your performance to a different night. What is that saying? That's saying, again, to me, and I've been in the administrative role, that's saying, we don't think music is all that important. We want you, we want a good program, but you're not that important.
right. No, that's a very good point. I had a college professor, and she always told us that if you're ever in a job interview and they offer you the job on the spot, you get your buns out of town as fast as you can and drive away. That was her advice to us. And
That's very good
well,
advice, and
it's probably true.
still
So it
true.
Yep.
was like,
Yep.
Still
oh
true.
goodness. Well, everything you guys have said is just so good. Let me close with another quick question.
Mhm.
And whoever wants to answer first, what are some things that you've learned as a teacher or administrator by working with student teachers? Just some couple general little through your observations and your interactions, and or maybe it was with a cooperating teacher, but you're
That,
both thinking.
Oh.
yes. Yeah.
Not
Learning.
because it's hard to think of something, it's there's so many, it's hard to, like, identify, and one or two things to share.
I guess I would say that one of the things that I have learned in my role now as working with student teachers is that um, I, I could have done a lot better job teaching in the classroom had I allowed myself to be more forgiving. And I think that's something I learned from a lot of the co-ops that say just through the way they teach and the way that they present, you don't have to do everything perfectly. You don't have to have a lesson that is just, and I think if I had known then what I know now, I think my third graders would have gotten a lot better education at times because I just put so much pressure on myself. And I think that's something that we're doing a better job of teaching our new young educators. And it's due to good co-ops that come out and say, you know, you're going to make a mistake. It's going to be okay. We'll move on.
But to follow up on that, I'm really glad you said that because I think that's kind of the difference between classroom teachers and specials teachers.
Mhm.
Because specials teachers, we have a lot more room for forgiveness. And we have that flexibility
Yeah.
to this lesson wasn't perfect, but I learned what we need to fix and give those kids the flexibility where I think classroom teachers they have so many standards put on them and so many things they have to meet and we don't quite have that they have a lot more pressure on them. I always feel bad for the classroom teachers because it's just like, well, all this is just put on them and they have to meet all this one
But
way
if
or
we could
another.
learn to give ourselves in a classroom, a third grade classroom, more grace like our specials do, and be able to say, "We'll get to this tomorrow. This is not a big deal." And I do see it happening more and more. In fact, I just saw it here 2 observations ago with the high school teacher, and she very calmly said to me, "Hey, T, I didn't get through everything I planned, but I've learned that there's still tomorrow." And I thought, "Good. That's good because that is so true." And I think you're right, Erin. I think special teacher, because how many times does your schedule in all your years of teaching get completely messed up? And what's the answer administrators give? Well, let's just take them out of PE. Let's just take them out of music. That's not a big deal. Those people will adjust. Well, it's kind of the nature of the beast, unfortunately, that we as administrators, and I did it a couple times. I learned real quick. Sandy McDonald said we are stopping that. But I did learn, and I think that's too often the go-to. Oh, those specials people. But what does it do? It teaches you guys the resilience and the grace and the flexibility.
Well, and I always appreciated my last couple years at my last school at Cedar Heights. Our principal, the first couple weeks of school, he just said, "I'm not, I'm not focused on anything except for building relationships. And if you're not teaching your math lesson for the first week, I don't care.
Yep.
Just this is a time to be building relationships with your kids." And I just always appreciated that because he wasn't concerned. He said, "I know you'll get it done, but right now is another time."
And in
Yeah.
this world we live in, I think we all need to work on building relationships.
Yeah. Well, yes, we do. Yeah. Amen.
Absolutely.
Nikki, do you have
Absolutely.
anything to add?
Yes, I was just going to say, Aaron, to your point, I think that that he was a trailblazer in that. I mean, I wish I had known the value of building those. I mean, we did it naturally, but we never talked about
Yep.
the importance of building relationships when I started teaching. And I love that our students, Chris, our pre-service teachers just really get that. And I think they've been raised to recognize the value of that with their own teachers, and now they understand the value of that with their own students. The two things I was going to highlight to answer your question, Aaron, is the first, if I speak philosophically, I would say what I've learned from my students the most is that there is great hope in the future. And at these times of self-interest, I think that's really hard for some people to recognize. But every time I look at their work and their aspirations and the way that they um, set goals for not only themselves but for their future programs, I just they're going to be amazing, and there's definitely hope for both. Well, there's just hope in the world, but there's hope for our future. There's hope for music education. There's hope for education as a whole.
But isn't it nice at our ages to get to see that potential and see these
Oh,
people coming up? Because we talk
yes,
about this in our music organizations. Who's gonna when we're not doing this anymore, who's gonna be here?
yeah,
But to see
Yep.
these young people coming up and they're doing great things and
hmm,
Absolutely.
it's so exciting because it's like no, we're in good hands.
Yep.
There are kids coming up and they're going to be awesome.
Yep.
yes,
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
they sure are, and I am confident that that they will beat the national statistic of leaving the field within those first 5 years. I really am confident that all of our teachers will beat that. They'll make it longer for sure. The second thing I wanted to highlight is on a more practical level. I I love that my students teach me new ways to organize life. So this is like on a technology level, right? But I don't know that I ever take the time to seek ways to and I wouldn't say they're necessarily even shortcuts, but when I still like to make phone calls. I still like to I still like to write out notes. I still like to even write out my rehearsal plans. But my students teach me better, faster ways to communicate, more efficient ways to communicate. Um, so I just really appreciate that. I think it helps me to be a better communicator.
Chris and I know this really well because we did a tech check on Monday, and I was actually tech support, which I'm not comfortable being at all because I'm more you, Nikki. I'm like, oh Lord, have mercy. But we got it worked out.
We did.
I'm learning a lot at West Music because there's a lot of tech, and I'm going,
That's
okay,
awesome.
my hand goes up. I need help. And
And we
everybody
got
says,
through it.
we will help you. We will help you.
Yes.
Thank
Well, and I want
goodness.
to be clear, I'm not opposed to using technology in the classroom, but I will say when our littles, especially when our students have so much screen time in the rest of their school day, I
Yes.
really encourage music teachers, all specials, but especially music, art, PE, like really, and library, like let's step away from that for this 40 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever we are allowed to have, hour long rehearsal. Let's intentionally be organic because they have so much of that in the rest of their day.
And I 1000% agree because when the middle school opened at Waverly, that was right when everybody got iPads.
Hmm.
So then it was always like when specials came around, oh, well, you want them all to bring their iPads then? And I said no,
No.
Yep.
because I said this is our time. We're gonna be a community and we're gonna have interaction
Yep.
person to person.
Yes.
Not, yes, I could do technology
Mhm.
lessons and you sit at your iPad and do this, but no,
Yep.
they
Yeah.
do that all day long.
Yeah.
And we need this interpersonal
I agree.
connection
More
because
than
that's
ever.
what we're losing nowadays.
Yep.
Mhm.
And, even everybody with their phones. I mean, what do you do without your phone? Well, just set your phone down. You'll be fine for 5 minutes. It's just
Mhm.
like, come on,
Mhm.
get over it. But okay, ladies, now we've hit the fun part. We're almost to the end. So we always do a little lightning round of questions at the
Oh, boy.
end. They're all music-based questions,
Oh,
and there are
great.
no wrong answers.
Okay.
It's just opinions. So you're no judgment.
Okay.
All right, are you ready?
Yes.
I can't wait because I designed these just for you two to see what you'd say. Uh, can you name your favorite musical?
The favorite musical?
Favorite musical?
Okay. To produce or be in or direct?
What? Or just to watch?
Just to watch.
Oh, just to watch.
It's most enjoyable.
Oh, Lord. Probably the Wizard of Oz musical that, Nancy Allen put on, and then and my kids were in it in New Hartford, and then Aaron Hansen put it on, and I had the wonderful, wonderful opportunity to go watch that. But I would have to say that is probably by far my favorite.
Yeah, well, I do love that musical. Thank you for saying that, Nikki.
So I'm going to pick the one that's like the most comprehensive to direct, be in, and watch, and the
Oh.
whole thing would be. This is kind of an interesting one, but would be Annie.
Oh, that
I
is
grew
Oh,
up
I
with it
love
from like I know
Annie.
every word, I know every song, I know every detail. Yes, and I've had the
That's a
pleasure
good one.
of directing
Kenzie
it
just
twice.
chimed in and said yes to Annie.
Oh.
But
yes.
Chris knows I love Wizard of Oz. I did it like 10 times.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, which instrument do you think is overplayed? The egg shaker or the tambourine?
Oh.
I
Egg
think
shaker.
I
Oh,
was just gonna say that, Nikki. I don't
Were
know
you?
why. Yes.
you
I don't
both
know
agree
why.
it's egg
Just
shaker?
say egg shaker, yeah.
I would agree with you too,
Yeah.
actually.
And the
Okay.
damn boom whackers. Who played
Ooh.
those?
Not a fan, huh?
Oh, I
They
would go
are
crazy.
overplayed.
They're, when teachers have them out and music people, and they're boom whacking, and I'm like, "Ah!" But that's just a side note.
Okay. Well, all right. Now here's an either or. You have to pick your favorite. Now this one's going to be a tough one. Kelly Clarkson
Mm.
or Carrie Underwood.
Oh, Kelly Clarkson,
Oh, and
hands down.
I was going Carrie Underwood, so there you go.
Oh, split on that one.
50-50.
50-50. Okay, how about this one? Well, a line dance or an Irish jig?
Line
Oh.
dance.
I know what Nikki's going to say.
While Chris thinks about it. Oh, is that your answer, Chris?
Line dancing.
Oh, line dance.
Hello.
Well, I was gonna say while you're thinking about that, but I didn't know that that was your answer. Mr. Hanson,
Bootsy
you'd be
and
very proud of me because I
boogie.
just taught Alabama Gal yesterday to my second years.
Yes.
And
Oh,
I thought of you the whole time. I was like, oh, because I learned that from you. And yes, so you'd be so proud of me. Okay,
Line
so
dance or Irish jig?
and they both have so much value. Um, I'm gonna go with line dance because that's what I like to do myself.
Oh, I
So
thought you were going to say Irish
I know,
jig.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. They're both, I know, that's a tough one. Okay, then this is your last one. Now, this one's personal, so you have to give it a quick bit of thought. But a favorite musical memory.
So when I was little, my dad played in a cover band. And in those days, we didn't have DJs yet. That's how old I am. And
I'm
so
with
he
you.
played for anniversaries and supper clubs on Sunday afternoons, and But on the Sunday afternoons after church, sometimes after our Sunday dinner, the whole family would go with. And so I remember being like 2 or 3, sitting on the edge of the stage with my legs crossed, all pursed, and my purse in my hands, and my frilly Sunday dress on, and just watching the old couples just twirl. I mean,
those are probably
partner
people
dancing,
my
I'm
age.
so sad that that has gone away, but just watch them twirl all over the floor nonstop and just dreamy. And just the music, the old music that went with that. The old time waltzes and the polkas and the two steps. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh, that's a good memory.
It is
Yeah.
wonderful. That
Okay,
really,
Chris.
you know, my one that I will never forget, I had the most fabulous middle school, junior high, 7th, 8th, and ninth grade, Owine, Iowa. Her name was Ethel Oberfell, and she was a large woman. And my dad was good friends with her, called her nickname, or what adults called her, was M. Oberfell. And she had expectations. I mean, you did not come into her band and not expect to get yelled at if you weren't doing it correctly. And I was, but my dad said, "Well, Chris, you played the piano and then you quit taking lessons and you have a great sense of rhythm. And M's looking for someone to be a percussionist. I think you should try it." And like I said, Miss Oberfell scared me. But so I went in as this little 7th grader and said hi. And she said, "Theo," my maiden name, "Theo, go back there and show me what you can do on a bass drum." And I'm just like, I don't know what to do. And so she said, "Just beat that thing." And so I'm like hitting it. "You can do better." And so I couple more times, and pretty soon she was singing and I was following her. She goes, "That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. Somebody who knows to keep the rhythm." And I just kind of stood there for a minute and she goes, "You're hired. I'll see you tomorrow." And I think of that all the time because I was scared of her and she had me. And the next thing I was beating that bass drum in rhythm and time to her singing. And boy, that woman could sing loud. And so that's one I always think about when people say, "Well, you're not in music." No, but damn, I can play a bass drum. Thanks, Emily. There you
That's
go.
awesome.
I think that's my favorite question out of our whole podcast because people always have to share something personal. And I find out something because I know most of the guests, not all of them, but
Yep.
but most of the guests, and I find out some little tidbit that I'd never heard before. And it's like, oh, wow, that's a great memory. So, well, I want to thank Chris and Nicki for joining us and thank everyone for listening because this has been Play Now, Play for Life podcast with Aaron Hansen. And if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing and leaving a rating and review. Nicki, where do we find information about Wartburg College?
You can Google Wartburg College or you can go right to their website at wartburg.edu.
Perfect. And you can find us at westmusic.com/playnowplayforlife. And we're also on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and X. And you can find those links in the description. Play Now, Play for Life is a podcast by West Music.